Jujutsu Kaisen, chapter 259 is here. Todo is back, and it seems that we're gonna get a crazy fight sequence between Yuji and Todo versus Sukuna. However, a very important and one of my favorite characters dies in this chapter, so sit back, relax, and let's go through it all. The chapter begins with Yuji, Kamo, and CHOSO, where Yuji is asking CHOSO about convergence because the second person he is switching with is Yuta, so he'll need to master blood manipulation the hard way. So, in the first panel, we get the answer to the second person who switched with Yuji. Essentially, Uyui has the ability to switch souls between bodies, but each soul has a limit of 2 switches per month. We know that the first person Yuji switched with was Kusakabe, who taught him how to use simple domain. And in this chapter, we figure that the second person Yuji switched with is Yuta. And I guess this is so Yuji can learn reverse cursed technique, because I can't think about any other thing that Yuta can teach Yuji other than that. Anyway, back to the chapter, we figure out that CHOSO is a bad teacher and he basically does everything on instinct. However, Kamo explains the basic foundation of blood manipulation to Yuji by telling him to think of bathing in hot water. You can feel the heat encompassing your entire body. In that same way, you can expand your blood vessels, creating a vague outline of your body. Kamo adds that convergence is a technique that compresses your blood, meaning that we can use a sponge or paper, anything that can be crumpled in our hands easily to help with imagining. After that, we get a hilarious interaction where CHOSO feels bad for not being able to teach Yuji and suggests helping him with Supernova. Kamo then rebukes CHOSO and tells him that Yuji should focus on the basics of stitching and stopping blood for now. Next, we get an explanation of Sukuna's furnace. Unfortunately, the theory of the black box went down the drain. The theory of Sukuna storing the techniques of the sorcerers he consumed in his shrine is not true. Furnace is a part of Sukuna's cursed technique shrine, and after Giga's explanation, Sukuna's technique makes a lot of sense. Sukuna's cursed technique is called Shrine. This technique has multiple elements: cleave, dismantle, and furnace. However, Sukuna can open the furnace doors after preparing his ingredients, cleave and dismantle. Outside of Sukuna's domain, furnace cannot be used on multiple targets. This explains why and how Sukuna was able to use furnace on Jogo and Mahoraga in the Shibuya incident. Furnace is part of Sukuna's domain expansion, which explains how he used it in the present fight. But if he wants to use it outside his domain, Sukuna can't target multiple people. That's why he said open before using it against Yogo, meaning that he opened the doors of the furnace, then he used it like a fire arrow. Now, to better understand Sukuna's technique, imagine a chef preparing a meal. He needs to cut and prepare the ingredients before cooking the meal. Likewise, Sukuna needs to use cleave and dismantle multiple times before using furnace. Furthermore, the furnace is in Sukuna's domain expansion inside the shrine. He can use it outside his domain, however, Sukuna can't use furnace on multiple targets outside of his domain. Uraume, seeing Sukuna going to use furnace, tells Hikari that this is their win, because this is Sukuna's ultimate attack. Even Mahoraga got obliterated by this attack in Shibuya. Gege also explains why Sukuna wasn't able to use furnace in the fight against Gojo. He explains that on top of constantly altering the necessary conditions for Sukuna's barrier techniques, the repeated use of binding vows to alter the domain's range meant that during his battle with Gojo, the furnace remained cooled as Sukuna didn't have the freedom to unseal the flames. I really appreciate Gege for explaining this from the start. Usually Gege likes to keep us confused or disoriented before he clears things up. However, now we get to the sad part of the chapter. As Sukuna unleashes the furnace, his most powerful attack, Yuji is just powerlessly watching because he can't do anything to defend himself. But CHOSO jumps in and creates a blood barrier around Yuji, sacrificing his life to save his little brother. Yuji is shocked and he tells CHOSO that he can't do this. CHOSO slowly dies as he says, "I'm sorry I was useless during training. Your big brother tends to do things instinctively." Next, we transition into a scene where CHOSO and Yuji are in their imaginary soul world. CHOSO compliments Yuji for learning reverse curse technique faster than him. Yuji says it's due to Sukuna using his body that he achieves it, but CHOSO says it's okay. Little brothers are meant to surpass their older brothers. Yuji scolds CHOSO and says, "You just can't disappear." CHOSO, "Right, I need to apologize to Tsukumo too." CHOSO, "Yuji, I'm sorry I'm leaving you alone again." Yuji, "You were always by my side when times were the toughest. That's more than enough." As we transition back to the present, CHOSO departs with final words. "Thank you, Yuji, for becoming my brother." Yuji says goodbye to CHOSO as he finally says, "Thank you, big brother." And this is how we say goodbye to one of the best characters of Jujutsu Kaisen. CHOSO's development through the series was amazing. He started as an antagonist who wanted to avenge the death of his brothers. However, when he discovers that Yuji is also his brother, he changes. CHOSO fought Kenjaku at the end of the Shibuya incident. He then protected Yuji during the Itadori extermination arc, and I don't know if you remember this, but CHOSO was key to finding Tengen in the first place. CHOSO then helped Yuki protect Tengen, and he fought Kenjaku a second time. Finally, he was very helpful in the fight against Sukuna. I think that CHOSO's character was handled perfectly by Gege, and his death was the perfect goodbye. It was a pleasure to see CHOSO go from a villain to a hero. He went from trying to kill Yuji to sacrificing his life for him. Now, back to the fight. Yuji is shocked to see the amount of destruction Sukun's attack did and wonders if everyone else is dead. As Yuji stands helplessly and in shock, we see Sukuna's shadow approaching. However, Yuji is not alone. Todo is here. Finally, we see Todo, a character that everyone has been wondering about since the end of the Shibuya incident. It's been more than 130 chapters since we last saw Todo. Next, we go to a flashback. Todo and Mei Mei plan on how to rescue people trapped inside Sukuna's domain. By using Mei's crow and Todo's boogie woogie, they can get people outside. However, since Sukuna's domain instantly kills, Todo can't guarantee their lives, but it's good to try. Mei says, since Todo will be outside Sukuna's domain, he has to expand his curse technique's range by a lot. So she asks if he can really do it with that arm. Todo says he's not really sure of succeeding, but he says he can feel the heartbeat of Boogie Woogie. But Todo says they can't let Yuji know of this plan. Yuji and Sukuna were two souls in one body. Even though it's in the past, that connection itself is strong, so there's a possibility of their plan unknowingly being spilled to Sukuna. One important thing to note is Todo's hand. Todo severed his hand during the fight against Mahito in the Shibuya incident to limit the damage from Mahito's domain expansion. However, his left hand is covered and looks like he's hiding something that we'll see in the next chapter. The only logical thing that comes to mind is that he has some sort of cursed object that would help him enhance his cursed technique. I guess we'll figure that out in the next chapter. Next, the narrator explains that at the moment, there wasn't enough time to explain to Yuji everything. I mean, think about it. Todo needs to explain his plan with Mei Mei, and also Todo himself wasn't able to verify the safety of his allies. Plus, he couldn't swap Yuji and CHOSO, who are caught at the center of Sukuna's domain. So instead, Todo says, everyone else is most likely fine. And Yuji thinks to himself, I'll believe Todo, that's all I can do right now. Because after using his domain, Ryuman Sukuna has entered a state in which it is difficult to use his curse technique. The narrator comments, brotherly bonds linked on the path to victory. And the chapter ends here with no break next week.